Welcome to the Culture Edit. Unique perspectives into the personal and professional lives of individuals at the helm of successful business, athletics, art, and design. All right, welcome to the Culture Edit, episode 79. We'll make this intro a quick one because we have an amazing guest today. We're really excited to introduce him. But before we do that, we want to take a minute and introduce ourselves. I think we might have some new listeners because of this episode. So
for sure.
I'm Nikki Strickland. I'm one of the co-hosts, and I'm here with
Chad Strickland.
Also a co-host, husband, friend, business partner, all the great things in life. And we started this podcast as a way to really connect with our clients and connect with our friends, and it's grown into so much more than that. We do have a strategic consultancy called Niche Culture, where we help great companies with their company culture and become even better places to work.
Yeah, and that's a big part of how we know our guest, Ed Byers, who is a Medal of Honor recipient and retired Navy SEAL. He's the he was a Master Chief Special Warfare Operator in the Navy SEALs. He was a member of the SEAL Team Dev Group, which is also known as SEAL Team 6. And we've gotten to know Ed over the last few years, really with working with clients. We saw him at a client event once, and we hit it off, and we brought him in to work with several of our clients on leadership, and we're going to talk a lot about that. You want me to tell, I guess I should tell the audience a little bit more about Ed.
Yeah, so the way we structure this podcast is we like to ask a lot of the questions that you can't get the answers to anywhere else. So there is a ton of video content, interview content, and podcasts out there that really go deep into why Ed Byers received the Medal of Honor from President Barack Obama. So we're not going to go as deep into that, but let's give a quick overview of who Ed is and essentially what he's achieved, because it's truly incredible.
Yeah, so Ed received the Medal of Honor for his role in a 2012 hostage rescue mission in Afghanistan, where he was part of a team that was saving an American doctor, which you can hear on other podcasts, the details around that. But effectively, Ed was part of the group that went in to save this doctor. One of his teammates was tragically shot. His name was Nick Check, Petty Officer First Class Nick Check. Ed went into the building right after Nick and effectively got rid of the bad guys and helped save the doctor in the process. And we didn't ask Ed to go into great detail because we've heard him talk about this story so much. We were more interested in the other things around his training and what it's like to be a SEAL member, and also, more importantly, around the leadership aspects of being not only a member of SEAL team, but also what that looks like and how it translates into the civilian world and into the private sector. A few more things about Ed. We've known Ed for a while, but I did a little bit more research, which is always fun. As we just talked about, he received the Medal of Honor in 2016 from President Barack Obama, but he also has a lot of other medals and awards that we didn't even know about. 5 Bronze Stars of Valor, 2 Purple Hearts, Combat Action Ribbon, Navy and Marine Corps Achievement Medals, and then numerous other campaign and service medals for his multiple combat deployments. He was a member of the Navy and the SEALs for almost 20 years, and he retired in 2019. So how big of a deal is it to get the Medal of Honor? Like, that's something that we, have been really interested in, and we've heard Ed talk about this, but we researched it a little bit more.
And I don't think people quite understand. I mean, people know it's a big deal, but the numbers that you're about to rattle off are pretty shocking.
Yeah. So approximately 3,500 Medals of Honor have ever been awarded since it was created by President Lincoln in 1861. Since 9/11, only 64 have been awarded. So Ed is one of the 64 that has received that. So if you think about, there's been approximately 40 million people that served in the U.S. Armed Forces since the Civil War. Only 0.0088% of those service members have ever received the Medal of Honor. So really, really unique. And it's
the highest honor that you can earn in the military.
Exactly. So since...
Or I shouldn't say, it's the highest honor that you can receive in the military.
Since Vietnam, there was 6 medals awarded during the Iraq War, and then 18 medals in the war in Afghanistan. So right now, as of 2025, there's only 62 living recipients that have the Medal of Honor, and Ed is one of them.
So this was a really fun episode because we were able to record with Ed in person, which we really wanted to wait to do. We didn't want to do it over Zoom. He's an incredible human, and he's really fun to be around, fun to catch up with. So he was able to stop by our studio on Sunday, which was the first time for us. We normally record on Monday, but we did record on Sunday. Actually, when we first started the podcast, we did record a lot on Sundays. But
we've never had a guest come in.
We never had a guest come in on Sunday.
Sunday night, no less.
Sunday night, which we did reward him with a couple really good martinis from our favorite sushi place. So it was a really, really fun time catching up.
Wish we could have had the recorder going during that dinner, but
exactly. But let's jump right into it because Ed is gonna really just walk us through an incredible journey of his life and what he's learned and what he's taken away as far as knowledge and wisdom from the community and brought to the private sector.
Let's get into it.
All right, Ed, welcome to the Culture Edit. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Excited to do this.
And we were just talking about kind of the approach here. I did want to say this will be different than in the other podcasts you've done, mainly because we don't know a lot about the military and we're definitely going to screw up some terminology.
Sure.
So just like bear with us on that.
We're going to try though.
Yes. We've tried to educate ourselves on that, but yeah.
So the last time we talked, because I don't feel like we've spoken since then, you were jumping out of planes in Normandy.
Or getting ready to go.
Getting ready to go. How did that all go? I saw some things on your social media, but we haven't debriefed on it.
That's great, and
Yeah.
it's definitely a reminder that we need to stay in better communications.
Yeah.
Probably from my part, it's no. So that was the event for the 80th anniversary of D-Day.
Yeah.
And I'm not missing this opportunity again. And so probably a once in a lifetime deal, to put everything together. It's like, so I thought to myself, well, for many years now, since being a Medal of Honor recipient, there's been this cultivating idea, because a lot of other recipients do this, of creating their own charity so they can go and tackle what it is that they want to go after and do good. And so I said, there's no better time than now. So I started my foundation, the Untold Journey Foundation, which was the name of the operation, which I received the medal. And
I didn't know
so
that.
in a very, very short order, very much putting the cart before the horse, as you would say, had to put together a team, and everybody was really, really amped to be a part of this. Guys I had worked with and things of that nature, and the team expanded from my original intent. It kind of doubled in size, and we had a lot of support staff, personnel around it to make all this happen. And then it became a hyper fast way to raise a bunch of capital and get a bunch of sponsorships. From whether it was like Born Primitive clothing or complete parachute systems, which makes a lot of the majority of the parachutes for special operations, or Gator Eyewear, Delta Airlines, like you just really tapping into the network. And so in just a couple of months, planned this international jump trip into Normandy, where we integrated with the U.S. Navy Leapfrogs, which are a mixture of SEALs and special boat team members and other people from Naval Special Warfare.
So real quick, when we saw all of these different planes doing that at the same time, these were different groups coming together at the same time to do it?
Whole bunch of different groups.
Okay.
So whether it's, so we were integrated with a organization called the Liberty Jump Team, which does this every year at a grand scale. So they have it very well figured out, and we jumped all across the Normandy. So whether it was at St. Mary Glees, or we jumped into Mount St. Michel.
That's cool.
In a whole bunch of different places. And then we ended up going to the cemetery on D-Day, which was just truly remarkable. Being there on the hallowed grounds at the exact time that they were coming across the beaches 80 years ago is just one of those things that it gives you chills. And more importantly, there was nearly 200 World War II veterans that were there, and a handful of people that were actually on the first waves of D-Day. So spending time, it was about a 12-day trip, and spending time interacting with them at a whole bunch of different events, and just doing something that was absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So
It's probably the last time from a 5-year period that many guys from that era will be there. Like they've 80 years. I mean,
I'm gonna hopefully not butcher this statistic too bad, but I believe there's about 130,000 World War II veterans left.
Yeah.
And a large number, perish each day. So they're losing about 30,000, I think, a year.
Yeah.
And think about it, these were 200 people that could travel. And some of them were just, we would say like just still pipe hitters, like 104 years old, walking around like with no assistance, talking to you, super sharp.
Right.
And like, there's a reason that you're 104 and made it through all those wars and everything else, because you were a different type of human. And
with a glass of gin in their hand, and
100%. They're like, you're asking, like, you ask them all the question, like, how have you, what's the secret to life? How'd you make it this? And like, I think one of the guys was actually said a cognac and a cigar every day. Yeah. It's like, I still
exactly.
So my granddad would have said.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was 100 and something, I don't care what I'm consuming at that point, right?
Yeah.
I think I made it, right? And so
I would say, because I was curious, how do you physically prepare for that? Like, you haven't done this.
That's what I was going to ask. When was the last time you jumped out of a plane?
Yeah. So thankfully, the people on our team were still active jumpers, as you would call like a sky god.
Yeah.
And so, which was former leaders of mine and that nature, and still doing like jump operations and jump programs. So we took the same type of approach like you would do, like if we were doing a jump trip within our community. So, we said, hey, look, it mandatory. There'd been a couple people that had not jumped out in a few years. So it was like, hey, look, we got to get all of our credentialing back. We got to make sure our license are good to go. And we went back out to Arizona and spent a weekend doing jump operations. And what was really unique is
getting less rusty,
right? And it comes back really quick, but there was one unique twist here, because part of the mission statement and what we wanted to achieve over there was be great ambassadors to the greatest generation, and just show them how much we care by being there and engaging with them. And the second part was really to honor the legacy of those that jumped into Normandy, right? And so that was the beginning of airborne operations. And so we wanted to marry that and bookend it with, current, special operations style, military, parachute operations. So what that meant is that, and then you have in the middle is your civilian fun jumping. So we all bought replica, 1944 outfits, and there's a static line component of it. Well, guys that are free fall, they don't like to do static line anymore.
And that's where they clip
they clip into the plane.
So when you jump out, it just opens your chute.
It opens up, and it's what they had to experience, you know. So
that's cool. Yeah, I think I told you before. My granddad, who raised me, was an 82nd Airborne, and he used to talk about hard landings a lot. And then coincidentally, Nikki's granddad flew, I think, C-17. I forgot what it was. I don't know what you jumped out of, but
the C-47. So
I think that's.
Maybe that was it.
Yeah. So, and the coolest part of that was we jumped out of the lead bird that flew on D-Day.
Oh, wow.
It still exists. It's known as a commemorative Air Force.
Yeah.
It's got its own website. It's called All That Brother. And so cool. they found it in a boneyard, dumped a bunch of millions of dollars into it, and rectified it. And the chills of just knowing that 80 years prior, people were inside of this, getting shot at and puking inside because they were jumping into battle.
Yeah, it's crazy.
To combat the Nazi offensive. And so, that part is just absolutely amazing. So you're touching the skin of the plane that guys touched 80 years prior, and it was the lead bird on the invasion.
It's just so surreal.
Surreal.
Yeah,
it was really surreal.
Like, am I really doing this? Yeah. That's cool.
What's your next adventure?
We just received back our 501c3 status
Nice.
in January. So we're officially chartered as a nonprofit, and just in the interim, it's getting back more to what the original intent, and that did meet intent. What the original intent of this organization is going to be to create a ranch base of operations on the East Coast for the SEAL teams and people that are part of the Joint Interagency Task Force and other organizations that do combined exercises or operations overseas in very high complex environments that they come retreat to with their families. And then a subset of that is to create these excursion teams. So the excursion team of the foundation is called the Neptune Raiders, and there's just going to be like subsets, because everybody's got different personalities when they retire and on active duty, and like maybe some guys are like, I've just always wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
So maybe there's 2 or 3 people that want to do that, and we figure out a way to make that happen. That can so they don't have to work during that time, don't have to worry about their mortgage or things of that nature. And it's just kind of like one of those like thank you for your sacrifices, and here's something to go reconnect and light the fire back again in your soul. So it's what we're calling being true to yourself. So triumphing through rediscovery, unity, and empowerment of the individual who sacrificed so much for the nation. Yeah. So little diving excursions, or if you want to go shoot or mountain climbing, or there's guys that cycle, you know, all that stuff.
We could lead a trip.
Yeah,
lead
exactly.
a cycling trip.
100%. Like, hey, you want to go cycle across France? Really cool sidebar conversation on the cycling component.
Yeah.
I do not get on my bike as much as possible. And I have way back, probably it's 18 years old now, but a Madone 5.5.
Nice.
So it looks
Lance inspired Madone.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. Yeah, back when that was cool. But no, so I was planning a trip for my family, and I was in Afghanistan, and I was planning this, Europe vacation. It was like once every 3-4 years, you finally take vacation, you figure out how to leverage points and stuff like that. You don't, you're limited when you're on active duty of what you can do. So you got to get creative how you make put these trips together. But I had leveraged Marriott points quite heavily on it, and I had booked the only Marriott that's on in Paris, and I mess up the names because I don't speak French, but the Champs-Élysées.
Yeah.
And so right down from the Arc de Triomphe.
Yep.
And I'm planning all this 6-7 months in advance, and I was not even tracking anything around the sports environment because I'm in Afghanistan.
I know where this is going.
We check in, and we get in. Everything's great. And it's like the first time everybody's there because we had flown into Italy and then drove all our way through Switzerland and up into Paris. And so anyway, they said that you couldn't leave. Your car's not going to be able to leave for a couple of days. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
They're like, they looked at me like, are you serious right now?
Do you live on this planet?
Do you live on this planet? I was like, no. Like, why can't we get our car out? They're like, it's the end of the Tour de France.
Yeah.
It's the final stage.
It was the final stage. And so I'm like, are you serious? That's really cool.
That's amazing.
And so they had because they were such a great hotel and understanding like where we were coming from and all that stuff. They had given us one of the 3 rooms that had a balcony that overlooked the street.
Wow.
And so our balcony
It's like gold.
was 100 feet from the finish line.
Wow.
And
That's
so
incredible.
I watched the end of the tour from the balcony in Paris. And I had no clue 7 months prior that when I was booking this place that it was going to be on those days. And so like the helicopters coming by and like we're watching ourselves on the TV because we were in frame.
Yeah.
Of that, just staring at the finish line. Anyway, that's my my one cycling component.
Were you blown away by how big of a spectacle it is? Because
Yeah,
I've been
it's
there
incredible.
for that.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's like the crowd is like 30 deep
Yeah,
on
it
each
was
side.
incredible.
It's so crazy.
incredible.
Yeah.
I still haven't been, but we need
know.
to do.
Yeah.
We need to do a trip. Well, I've been to a lot of the Belgian classics.
Yeah.
Which are really fun one-day races to watch because
Yeah.
same thing. You're like in a random field in Belgium, and there's just guys like flying by cobbled streets. It's cool. But
Yeah.
Tour de
That's
France
really
on the
cool.
list, yeah.
It's like I don't even know how I secured a reservation.
Yeah.
We actually we were talking about this earlier because we were listening to another podcast, Johnny, and we've heard you talk about B.U.D.S a lot. and talking about, you're wet, you're cold, and you're sandy, and you're miserable, and there's a huge mental component. And you talked also about how there's often guys where you're like, oh, that guy's definitely he'll be fine. And he's like
he's like a collegiate swimmer,
and he's like
or
ringing the
runner.
bell, right?
Yeah.
And then it's the guys that like you don't expect always that are able to. It's 90. Yours was like 90% attrition, right, of your class.
Yeah, it was pretty
Yeah.
close to that,
Yeah.
which is it's pretty standard.
Which is, but it's about
75 to 90 is typically when you look at people who originally start. Yeah,
it sounds like it's about at that moment, because everyone's physically fit. It's really about who can mentally suffer through it. Is that a good assessment of
it
kind of how you describe
it is a good assessment. I would say a very small percentage. Now I think it's much different, but you're even talking 2002, which is crazy. The internet was just like coming around essentially of like,
and just realized how long ago 2002 was. I could tell
like
it
doing
registered in your mind when you said that.
well, it's 5 years before the iPhone.
Yeah.
Like there's no readily access to information outside. You had your gateway computer and it was dial-up AOL, right?
Exactly.
So, it took a minute for a page to load. So, there just wasn't as much information out there. So I think nowadays people show up in a much different fitness level.
Yeah.
Which is why it's incredibly more competitive to even get a billet or a spot to get into the training.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, for the most part, people are showing up, be able to perform.
Fit.
And some guys are already at the level they need to make it all the way through the training. And then some guys are at the level that they're good to go right now in this time period. And as the weeks progress and you're doing more and more PT, you're going to naturally just, because the times get lower and lower, so the standard gets higher and higher as you progress throughout all of training. So, but at the end of the day, it's all the mental thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are a very great segment of the population that are athlete based that could do any one of those evolutions, but it's like, are you willing to do that day in, day out
with no sleep,
6 months, 7 months, and make it through all that? And I think really comes down to like, how gritty are you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that, I'm referencing, Angela Duckworth's book on grit, but it's, how much are you, willing to suffer? And, don't quote me on any statistics around this, but it seems when you get into those, if you're an elite athlete and you've just always excelled in your field, and right. And so you come from whatever town, and you were the best, and, and the favorite and all this stuff, and you won everything. And maybe it was even slightly easy for you. Then the second you now get into an environment where you're not in that town anymore, you're in a class where there's 150 other people that are like you.
Just as good.
And now all of a sudden you're not the fastest or the strongest, or you might actually, there's also an injury component that could happen very well. And maybe you get slightly injured and you don't have the recovery that you used to have. And you can't take all these, types of supplements, because of the impact on your body, and they just don't let you do that. So I think once that starts it can eat at people. And that's not to say, there's definitely, national champion type level people that go into the program and they do well.
Yeah.
Right. So, but I think
but you gotta want it bad.
You have to have no option.
Yeah.
Right. If you had other options in life, truly, why would you want to suffer that way?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's the
Meaning,
drive.
and maybe option isn't the right word, but if you gave yourself any other, an out, like, okay, well, if this doesn't work, I can go do this. When things suck that bad, you're gonna pick the Like, I'll just go out and go do what I was going to do before.
Right. That's fine. I'll just do that.
That's fine. Right. So you really got to give yourself in your mind, at least, like there is no other option.
You talked about every time you started to doubt, you're like, oh shit, can I do this?
Yep.
All of a sudden the circumstances would change. Like your instructor would pause or do something. And we talk about that a lot because I had a mentor in bike racing that said, like, when you think you can't do it, just give it 10 more pedal strokes and it always changes. And like we talk about that all the time. Like Nikki talks about that in running, just like every single time. But it's funny how that works out. Like if you can just suffer beyond that point where you think you can't, then something's going to happen to change it.
Yeah, it's just like 10 more steps or things of that nature.
Yeah.
But then, I would be amiss if I didn't say that in those dire moments, it really came down to like prayer and faith and stuff like that, because,
get me through this.
If you want me, I know I want to be here. I know I want to do this, but ultimately, is it your will? Like, so if your will is for me to make it through this program, like, I don't know how much more I could take right at this very second. So, and it would be like one of those, there was a handful of times throughout training where it was setting up prayers and it's like, your back's killing you or whatever the case may be. And it's like, I don't know how much more my body's going to take on this. So I could really use a break, and it'd be like 5 seconds later, those few different times that happened, it would, like, the whistle would blow and you get to take like 10 minutes rest.
Yeah. But it reinforces that thought process of like, okay, I'm meant to do this.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And so you get emboldened by that, a concept, right? And so you keep going. And then I would say, because my childhood and background and growing up and where I came from, there wasn't a lot of people cheerleading, were thinking that I could go do this thing that people really didn't know much about, other than that it was a very specialized elite part of the military.
Yeah.
And so there is really there's a component that not wanting to let people be right about you.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, there's no way in hell I'm going to let them have the satisfaction that I didn't make it.
Exactly.
That there is a component of that. That
everything I've done has been to prove others wrong. Right?
It's a great motivator.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a great motivator.
Yeah.
It's a part you got to prove to yourself, right? There's a little bit of luck. There's definitely preparation, hopefully divine intervention. And then there's then there's a part where it's like, I'm not letting other people, win this.
Yep. Determination. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Well, and it's funny because this past weekend when we were at the FSU Seminole 100, it's like for the fastest 100 growing companies that are owned by alumni. And it was so refreshing to meet all these other entrepreneurs and business owners. And one thing we talked about is how we feel like, and not like saying anything negative about anyone's alma mater, but there's certain schools where you kind of graduate, and because that school name is on your diploma, you're just thrust into a different type of world and jobs and what people just expect of you.
Definitely not Florida State.
Florida State is an amazing school. I love it, but it's not, you're not coming out like Harvard, And so it's kind of one of those, and I've always had not like a chip on my shoulder, but I always have had I didn't feel like I had any other choice other than to go to an in-state school. And so to hear other people saying, this is how we prove, all of the people we knew from high school or whatever that went to the fancy schools and all of this, that they're just working at, some normal job now, and we're all building something.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it's to that point, it reinforces, because I'm not gonna lie, we've been working really hard and I was getting really tired, mentally tired. But being around that and seeing everyone else just with that drive, it's contagious. And you're like, okay, yep, this is why I do it. I do it because I want to be with other people that are driven, and I want to prove people wrong.
Yeah.
So it's a very powerful,
energizing.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk about fitness, because we are kind of talking about buds. I told you we got different kind of questions for you.
No, I love it. I love it. This is great.
So we're very curious, because we have a lot of people that are fitness enthusiasts that listen to this podcast. Thinking about you when you're in special forces and you're part of SEAL, when you're there, I know there's a difference between what you're doing when you're deployed versus non-deployed.
Sure.
Walk us through how you guys stayed in shape. And I'm talking about physical shape, like what you're doing, but also the level of skill when it comes to weapons, hand to hand, everything else that you've got to be prepared to do. Kind of walk us through what that looks like, because I'm very curious.
Especially when you're in a very remote place.
Yeah.
Where it's not like you just walk down to the gym.
Yeah, is it like 0 dark 30 or flipping tires and waiting for the call to come, or like what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some flipping tires. I mean, tires are they're a great tool that are readily available all around the world.
Yeah.
And you can, put concrete in them too. That's another easy material.
Never thought about that.
Yeah. The really nice component of it, and granted, you're always going to have an outlier, even in highly specialized units, and is that everybody, the overwhelming majority of people, if close to all, you're already getting a hyper specialized and selected type of person with a mentality that they know that they have to maintain a level of fitness, because not only it's their job, but because more importantly, your brothers to your left and right, you depend on you.
Yeah, you can't let them down.
You can't let them down. And so there is always that continued, pressure around that. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the program is, I think, much better now. It's way more sophisticated. It's tailored. There's a lot more science that's been curated over the past 20-something years, of about human performance. I think we're in this new era of human performance, and the concept around that. It's not just working out, but it is, that idea around human performance. So it's not only physical, but it's also mental. It's, spiritual. It's the legs on a chair, right, that keep the human up. And so back in the day, it was just beat sessions.
Yeah.
Right. And it was just, can you survive and not get hurt?
So is there someone programming it? Is someone?
Well, yeah, it's old school programming. It's like calisthenics, right? In like, say, B.U.D.S, and I'm talking, the early days of training. And then, you get out of B.U.D.S, and which that's just, endless amounts of just calisthenic based
full
running,
body
swimming, sit-ups, push-ups, pull-ups. I remember, this time where we were doing push-ups. You're not doing the entire time, but for nearly, 2 hours, just in the push-up position, right? And, your back looks like a banana, and at that point, and, you're only going down like an inch.
Right.
Like, there's no human that's actually doing that many, like, real legit for that long. And so once you get out of that, because that's a curated school, and then you start to move to more advanced training, it's what we would call, like, you start to put on your big boy pants, right? And it's, nobody's got time to micromanage you. And they're not going to, you've already proved that you're physically fit and you can meet all the metrics throughout all that stuff. Now it's incumbent upon you to just do it on your own, right?
Okay.
And so
it's like being a professional athlete.
Just being a professional athlete, right? Exactly. And so some guys work out together, and then I'm still talking about it like advanced training here. Or some guys just go work out on their own, right? And so, and they just know that you still got to maintain shape. And then once you get to your team, I can't talk about all the teams, but I think it's pretty standard across the board. You get back to this, now you're kind of working out at least a couple times a week with your platoon or your troop or your unit. And so you might do a 2-mile ocean swim together as a unit, as a group on Tuesdays, right? And then on Fridays or Wednesday or Thursday, you might go and run the obstacle course together as a team, because people also want to see that you're maintaining that level of fitness, and like you're not going to slack off, because and then Fridays, what we call Frogman Fridays type stuff, is you might do a 10, 12 mile, long run together, or maybe it's once a month they do what's called a monster mash, where you're doing a swim and a run and O course, and and then you call it an early day because you're traveling a lot. So when you're back home, you're like, okay, now we're gonna go have a team bonding lunch or something like that. And so like an early Friday, but it's really just geared around physical fitness.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way it works. And then as you move through, even in the more specialized units, where I ended up for 9 years plus of my career, then it's, you're definitely doing workouts on your own. But then you guys start to work out together, right? Because maybe they're achieving, like, guys will go, oh, I want to become like the deadlifting champion in the state, right? So, they're developing highly specialized workout programs or things of that nature. And then depending on who your leaders were, like our troop and our team, we did a lot of fight clubs. So I have a gym at the command, and we bring in professional boxers and people that do Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and things of that nature, combatives and stuff of that nature.
And they're helping you train.
Yeah, and they're down there. Some guys are like heavily into that. Some guys are not so much, and so you could go do that 5 days a week if you wanted.
Okay.
Right?
So it's like an elective of kind of how you want to stay fit.
It's how you want to stay fit, right? Rock climbing walls. Some guys like to rock climb, So and then they mix it up, and so you're not doing the same stuff day in and out. But great human performance centers now, and focused a lot on recovery and staying fit, because the Navy has invested a lot of money and a lot of time into you, and you also yourself, and you are in a way, you have to be a professional athlete. So, it's behoove you to take advantage of these different modalities.
I assume there's probably always one guy that's always like trying to like schedule everything, like, hey, we're going to do this tomorrow. Are you in? And like, there's all that pressure, right? Like, oh shit, I got to keep on this crazy guy.
There is like that, right? Yeah. And it is, but it's and when you're a new guy in any organizations, you're going to be obligated, voluntold type scenario to go do it, and that's great. And then as you get more seniority, then it's back on you, like, okay,
I got to do paperwork.
What was your choice of workouts to stay, like rock climbing, fighting, like what was it?
I liked I definitely liked the human performance stuff. I spent my first tour in the Marine Corps, so I was always combating, like, and their workout programs there are just archaic, back then, right? And it was long hikes, but not the right boots. So you destroy your feet and your back and all this other stuff. So it was curating, like making sure that I was keeping my, first and foremost is like, make sure that you can do the job.
Be healthy.
Be healthy and do the job, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of human performance program stuff. So just having a very specialized program that keeps my shoulder good, keep my lower back good, stuff like that. But like our troop are heavily into combatives, so we had to be down and doing combatives a couple times a week. So that was always
hand-to-hand stuff.
Yeah, it's all Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, and
is there like
then what they call combatives components. So prisoner handling, and then also anything around, like, now you actually have gear on, multi-threat scenarios.
Oh yeah.
Like, how do you get out? Like, actual practical things.
Yeah.
Right.
We have buildings that you can mimic hallways and rooms and stuff like that. So you actually put people inside those close quarter scenarios, and how do you manipulate them or take down the threat? And you wear that those suits and stuff like that, so you can actually go full throttle on people,
right?
And they don't get
they don't
jacked up, right? So yeah, I mean, we got some there's some really, really tough human beings. So yeah, even with those suits, you feel it.
Yeah.
Big time. So
it's like the bite sleeve, but a human bite sleeve.
Damn,
for sure.
Sounds like fun. I bet that was a lot of fun.
It can, and there's just a but there's always time in the morning allocated, right, for fitness is first and foremost.
Yeah.
You better not be on your computer. You better not be doing any sort of administrative work.
Yeah.
You're not home much to begin with, right? I mean, you're probably typically gone 240, if with deployment, 240, 300 days a year. So
yeah,
when you're back home, there is administrative stuff you have to do, but those first couple hours are to work out, and then really kind of stacked on that, because you're already sweaty or nasty. that we're going to do some training as a team. So you just throw on your kit and you go shoot, or you go do whatever's in the pipeline or on the schedule to go do that stuff. And then it's really the afternoon, if you guys have like administrative work to do, that's when they go tackle that.
Okay.
So
is there a minimum standard for SEAL team members in terms of combative ability?
It's all part of the pipeline.
Okay.
So even starting with B.U.D.S, you go through a combatives program.
Okay.
And so, you do that. And
that's a combination of different martial arts and
of martial arts.
Yeah.
It's all mixed martial arts stuff, right?
Okay.
And so, remember, you're not walking in any of these scenarios with just street clothes, right?
Right.
You have helmet on and night vision and, what we call, kit, your guns.
We call it kit too.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a little bit thinner.
Yeah.
Ours is more like underwear, but we call it kit.
So, it's like, it's like weapon retention and manipulating all these extra gear and weight that you have on you, and also taking care of the threat that's in front of you. So it's more combative phase, but there is foundational elements, right? It's like, okay, before you can get to doing that, you have to know how to properly throw punches and take punches, and
right.
Actually how to handle people on the ground and get them in the right position so you're not going to get thrown off because you have extra weight in your center of gravity and balance and all that other stuff. So the nice part about it is you have access to some of the best people in the world at this, so they come in and they're giving you this top line, like knowledge.
And so the same thing applies when I think of like weapons skills. Like you've got that foundation that just to get into the club, and then you're continuing to maintain that level of precision, basically shooting, right? Like and how you handle weapons. I assume that's
and so when you're looking at like we plan, you would plan a year schedule, right? So you're looking at that and go, okay, this week, and maybe that's a couple different times, we're going to go to an actual, combatives course.
Yeah.
So you would fly somewhere, find a world-class individual who teaches this, master black belt and, judo and things of that nature, and go to that course, and for a week, that's all you're doing, right?
That's
so
so
you're
cool.
just doing that stuff. And again, at the end of the day, though, it's whether or not guys have an affinity for it, and they take it up, and I would say probably way back in the day, it's not, that wasn't everyone's cup of tea, but the advent of like UFC blowing up and becoming mainstream, it's people are even, there's so many more people that are even coming into the teams that have been in mixed martial arts or jiu-jitsu,
right?
When they're joining the teams right now,
and they're world class.
They've already been doing it for 10, 15 years, or whatever the case may be. So they have a material advantage for sure, right?
I bet, yeah.
So
you're in the Navy SEALs, but then you decide SEAL Team 6, or like, I don't know if you get to decide on which SEAL team you go into, but you decide you want to do that kind of next level specialty. What is that process? Like what do you go through to get selected for that, if you can talk about it?
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely some things that, you got to be very careful. I mean, there's a lot of material out there, right? And so, but at the end of the day, it's all voluntary at that stage, and some people are just happy, where they're at. Then everyone has a little bit different, unique scenario, but naturally you would think, okay, you have these tiers, and so you have a tier 3 units that are like the regular SEAL teams. It's Green Berets, Rangers, things of that nature, and that's all part of SOCOM, Special Operations Command.
Is Delta included in that too?
And so then you have a very specialized set of that.
Okay.
As you get into what is known as like Tier 1 commands, and so then that's where you have like Naval Special Warfare Development Group and the Army's version, right? And so that's a whole voluntary thing. And so that's a whole nother 6 or 7 month, selection process where you're going through the same rigors minus the wet and sandy, but it's even more grueling because you have the added pressure of like, look, you're already a technically proven SEAL who's probably done a couple deployments, proved themselves. And so now it's like, are you actually capable of doing your job at a extremely high level and
so it's like, why am I doing this? I'm already really good, It's like another level.
But it's another level because it's a different mission set. And the unfortunate part, the fortunate and unfortunate part about it is that, it's that Pepsi challenge, and 50% of the guys that try it don't make it.
Yeah.
So, that's a gut check.
Yeah. I'm sure.
When you've already
check.
When you've already proven, like when you've already been through the meat grinder, and you're probably a great team guy, and it just for whatever reason, those specific criteria that you're tested against, you can't meet the mark, and then you get let go. That is that can be hard for certain individuals.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure.
Well, that's what I was, because in one of the podcasts that you were on that we were listening to, you talk about how in B.U.D.S, the whole idea is to completely strip your own identity away so that you act as a team, and you don't, it's not about the individual. But then as we were thinking and talking about it, when you get to such a high level though, through the ranks of whatever organization, there has to be more ego kind of coming back into the equation because you're more successful than everyone else in this area. How do you, at the highest level, still keep that, stripping the identity away to make sure the team comes first, but also pick people that have extreme confidence, because it's something I would assume you need extreme confidence to do. How do you balance that? Or are people already just naturally balanced? When it comes to
the community, the community is very good at keeping people in check, right?
Each other,
right? And so, their balance is an interesting word, but I would say it really comes down to, as you were describing, what I've talked about before was, one of the key components of B.U.D.S is they're getting people from all over, right? So they don't know their upbringings, cultural backgrounds, personalities is all playing in the mix, and they're grooming you to do something, and that's already a fully established community that has a very specific culture, very specific mentality, mindset, and so it's why the training is so austere, because they need to remove that layer of selfishness that comes from you. And so the idea around choosing to carry more, what we call team gear, your gear, than yourself. And it's to know that, hey, look you're not going to get through this program by yourself. If you don't figure out how to work together as a team, then the beatings will continue.
Yeah.
Right. Is literally, a saying. And so the point is that once you get to a certain level, right, and they've, for the most part, beaten the stupid out of you, right, the selfishness component, and taught you, like how miserable things can be, which, ends up humbling humans. Then they start to build you back up, right? So, okay, now, like, you've been through you went through the gauntlet, and now it's time to actually build that person back up. Because there was times when I wasn't alone during that time, the early phases of training, where it's like, I don't understand why they hate us so much, right? I mean, I get it. Like, there is this part of the program.
What's wrong with these guys?
But then there's like, I don't think they're acting anymore. I think they actually like fundamentally hate us. And so it
starts to mess with you. Huh?
It can mess with you, right? Yeah. And so what I didn't realize at the time was, and maybe they didn't realize it either, but I think if you look at it from a very professional psychology as they're removing away all these selfish qualities of you, they're re-engineering your subconscious and self-image.
Yeah.
So you have a different conscious mind.
Yeah.
And so it's their version of like neuro-linguistic programming.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but you got to build the person back up. So alluding back to your point is that you got to, the community very much rides the line between confidence and arrogance, right? And you have to. And I know you sat through presentations that I've given and stuff like that, and where we talk about through stuff that I do nowadays, doing consulting and performance coaching with, leaders and CEOs, is this concept around core strengths and they called the edge of chaos, right? So it's the zone of adaptability, and right at the very edge of that zone of adaptability is called the edge of chaos. And so the edge of chaos is where you're riding that fine line of continuously pushing yourself, and then sometimes you fall off that and you enter into the dark pit of chaos, but you have to be there if you want to be part of an elite organization. So you very much have to build back up the individual, because teams at the end of the day are built on individuals. And there's no other way to put it. And, it's and the great quotes around, C.S. Lewis and stuff like that is, humility isn't thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less often. And, the way that can be translated is, look at, when it comes to my job, when it's time to flip the switch, you better be thinking you're the baddest motherfucker on the face of the planet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because your teammates are relying on that, the nation's relying on you on that. But you also got to know, you got to know when to flip that switch back off.
Right.
Which is an art in and of itself. And that's where the humility comes. It's so it's not always about you. You got to think that there's other people involved in this, and I'm not doing this alone.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's where that humility component comes back in. And also that the humility component, that's why you train so much, because there's somebody out there that's training equally as hard that your near peer competitor or adversary. And if you ever have to go to war with them, who's going to win?
Yeah.
Right. So if you just think, if you rest on your laurels and I'm quote unquote a badass now, no, you're going to get, you die.
Yeah.
Right. So
that just requires so much self-awareness, because that is what Nikki and I were talking about earlier, is to know that you're a member of the most elite fighting organization in the world, for the greatest military in the history of the world. But then to have to be able to interact and be a normal human when you can.
Yeah.
History, that didn't happen, right? In the old days, the elite warriors were just elite warriors, and that's what they were. And
that's what they were.
Yeah. Right. It requires a lot of self-awareness to do
it
that.
Does.
Yeah.
And you don't always get it right. I mean, I've made plenty of mistakes in my life.
I'm sure.
Around that. But that's why you have to have, such great team members. You have to have, the person that's going to be the truth teller to you all the time. And it's, it's why we do after action so much. It's, we have some of those times are brutal, right? Because you're laying out on all your mistakes in front of everybody. And it's okay, why? Because we need to learn from it. We need to get better. But, when you're riding on that edge, because you have to, it's not always going to be perfect.
Yeah.
Sometimes things get sloppy. People make mistakes, and especially from person to person and human team dynamics and things of that nature. And but you gotta learn from them, keep growing at the end of the day.
That's interesting.
But you have to be willing to accept that you're going to have a group of people that are highly confident.
Yeah.
And that sometimes might become arrogant around it.
Yeah.
But just know that, that doesn't last too long, because you're going to have other people that are just as good as you. It's going to check you.
Yeah.
For sure.
So how do you, because we see a lot of work, obviously in the business we're in, we're, working with companies to try and make them better places to work, more or less. And a lot of times I think the hardest thing that leaders, especially nowadays, I think just because of social media and the ability for people to post online and criticize organizations and criticize individuals very publicly, it makes leaders a little nervous to give candid feedback or even have difficult conversations with their employees sometimes, because there's that nervousness of, oh my, essentially, am I going to get canceled if I have a hard conversation? How, in those kind of debriefs, how were those run so that, and obviously in that situation, people aren't going and posting on social media about someone, but how do you keep the team culture still positive even when you're heavily criticizing your own actions or giving difficult feedback to maybe another team member?
Yeah, so I think that really comes down to the way you do it, right? And so it is that mentality of you praise in public and you critique in private. And so the private setting is, okay, it's just your team and we're airing it out because we want to, this job depends on us, this job, you could end up dying from it, right? So you're like, how do you get better? It's that continuous desire to improve every day.
You guys are yelling at each other, telling the truth, but at the end of the day, you're letting it go. And
it's not, there's still decorum, right? I mean, there's still respect, right? I mean, if you're just being a blatant asshole, somebody's gonna come across the table and knock you out, right? I mean,
can't do that in corporate America.
There's a way to call out people's faults without being an asshole. There's just everybody knows that, but some people don't get it right. I mean, and I think this happens. This is a big thing in corporate America, because they don't have selection processes like this. So either they don't want to do it because they do not know how to have hard conversations at all. They probably need to pick up Horowitz's book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things, and give that a whirl. Or Crucial Conversations or something like that, right? But it's or they're the completely opposite side of the spectrum, and they're a thermometer instead of a thermostat. And so they're letting their emotions go wild in the conversation because they don't know how to control themselves in that environment, and they get really ramped up, and then they say things that they regret or whatever the case may be. And so it's a skill set. Giving appropriate feedback and the environment is a skill set.
That's one thing we talk about a lot, because we see, I mean, typically when we're working with clients, we're not just working with the executive leadership, but we're doing insight groups, maybe across, thousands of employees. So you're seeing managers all the way to the front line. So you get a pretty wide range of just, you start to create themes in your mind of what you're seeing from a really good leader, and you start remembering those little traits, those things they did, versus maybe someone that is more of a newer leader, or that just is not quite their thing, and you kind of put those in your mind as well. And one thing that I don't know why it sticks with me, but the number one difference between what I see as a good leader and maybe not so great or effective leader, I should say, is the ability for your team to be able to predict your emotions. And so if your team feels like when they sit down in a meeting, if something didn't go great, they don't know how you're going to react as soon as you walk in that room. You could start screaming at them. You could start out really neutral, and then all of a sudden out of nowhere you lose your temper. Or when things are high stress, you go immediately high stress and don't shield the team from that. Versus, some leaders that really can compartmentalize their emotions at almost all times to shield their team from whether it's something happening outside of, their control, or just, I don't know, just controlling their temperature with the way that they handle things. And I feel like that, to me, always sticks out, is you have to be a predictable leader in your, the temperature that you bring into every room, I guess.
Yeah, it's incredibly important, right? And we all know the saying is the second you start losing your mind and raising your voice, you've lost the engagement, right? I mean, so it's hard, depending on the gravity of the scenario, But yeah, nobody's going to work with anyone that's just, their first reaction is to scream at you when you do something, have messed something up, right? So this is where like, and we're human, we're fallible. And, I've been in that scenario myself. You learn from those type of things, and you grow, and you keep, improving the way you interact. But I think this is where like this concept around, there's all these different like leadership style traits, and really taking like a situational awareness leadership approach, right? And so it means that as a really great, effective leader, you know how to pick the type of leadership for that given scenario, right? Sometimes you need to be the mentor, the coach. Sometimes you need to be authoritative. Sometimes you need to be transformative. Sometimes, you need to just be like kind of laissez-faire and let the your team figure it out, type for you. You need to bring in a lot of emotional and relationship intelligence into the scenario. But I think it's really important, things that the military does and teaches, especially when you get into contact, is to, they call it SILS, stop, look, listen, smell around the environment, things of that nature. Is just take a moment and absorb the information coming in before you
take action.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And that moment could be minutes, it could be seconds, but always trying to put that, stopgap between what comes out of your pie hole and the initial onset of information that you're receiving.
100%. It's
so.
I'm curious, what has been your biggest surprise, maybe from a challenging perspective, but also from a positive perspective, going into the private sector and talking about leadership? What are those surprises look like as you look back on what you've done in the last few years?
Well, I can say I've been, blessed and grateful for, as I was making my transition out of the military. I'm like, okay, look, I've worked for the man for 21 years, right?
Yeah.
It's time for me to see what I can do on my own. I need to take the same approach as I did for when I wanted to be a SEAL, right? You got to go through the school. And, Thucydides was a ancient, Greek philosopher and war historian during the kind of the Spartan era. And he was like, men as great as those who goes through the severest of schools. And so for me, I was like, okay, I need to go back to school, but I'm going to now be amongst the civilian population. I'm not, for the most part, not been a part of that. Of course, you don't work for civilians. So yeah. Everyone's trained in the same type of school, so you know what their background is and where they come from and the mentality.
Yeah. You were familiar with civilians.
Familiar, right? And so, honestly, I saw a buddy of mine. He graduated from Wharton, got his MBA there. And it was inspiring.
Yeah.
He made the conscious choice that he needed to get out at this time. He had already done really great things for his country. And I watched him walk across the stage. And then, I didn't really know much about academia, outside of my general undergrad.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I really respect him as a person, and he's a smart guy, and he's already done the diligence around schools and things of that nature. I was like, I'll give that a whirl. So I was like, I'm going to apply to Wharton, got into Wharton, and biggest thing that came across my mind was, how am I going to relate to these individuals? Now we're going to be working in team settings, cohorts, things of that nature.
Yeah.
And I was just blown away. I was absolutely blown away at the caliber of individual that was in my class.
Yeah.
It made me feel like I was right back in dev group and in tier 1 special operations. But now this side of the house they're exceptionally good at administrative work and at schooling and things of that nature. And it was, team guys, not great at administrative work.
Right.
That's why we have these giant support staffs to take care and enable us to, enable operations so that you could focus on these core skills. And it was just like everything that I was weak in, they were exceptional at. It was like, okay, you had this X amount of work that needed to be done, and it was, due in like 8 days, and they had it done in like 36 hours. And I'm like, I just opened up the book, and you guys are already done with the assignment. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
So that was incredibly encouraging from that perspective. So I'm like, man, I know that I'm very blessed to be amongst these caliber of individuals, right? And but I'm also getting spoiled now because it's like, okay, I just came from a unit like that,
Right?
From different skill sets. Now I'm into this side, so just you're thinking everybody in your ecosphere is just accept,
Definitely
like that exceptional, right? So when you start to get into these, no matter where, right, these circles of people who do exceptionally great things, they're small, right, and then it's word of mouth thing, so that's usually where like a lot of the speaking comes from. It's like word of mouth components. So you're kind of rolling into like-minded mentalities,
Definitely.
different segments of society from a business perspective, but like-minded mentality.
Yep.
At the end of the day.
Yep.
In all reality, I would say that it's been more of just, I never expected to or think that there was going to be such a unique impact to be able to have on an organization.
Yeah.
On sometimes it's just, you get these people that come up and it's like, I can't tell you, we're talking about the very thing that I've been thinking about in my life for the past 4 months.
Yep.
And you just help me solve.
100%.
You're like, wow, like you're actually like, having the opportunity to impact lives. And that's been incredibly rewarding from that perspective. I would say that, from what I've learned and garnered from a wide variety, because of, you do engagements for all different types of industries, is that there is a lot of similarities within the workforce, particularly around, leadership, they're not able to make hard decisions,
Yep.
There's not, I think they just, like, it's putting like, lipstick on a pig or just painting over a wall without sanding and priming it first, is they just slap this title of leadership onto people.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of questioning around that, because they think because you're a manager of something that you're also a leader.
Yep.
And those are two entirely different definitions.
Completely. I mean, we were curious about, like, we were thinking about, leadership within the military. Like, you've got hundreds of thousands of people in the military. Like, you start off with that. And I'm sure the system to which you got to at the pinnacle level of performance automatically excluded, for the most part, that group that's a leader at title, but not a leader by actually what they're capable of doing.
Right.
But you don't get that in the private sector. Like, it doesn't. Most companies, I mean, there are some great companies, and some of them are clients. Like Pulte Group, I think, is a good example, where they've intentionally thought about how we develop leaders to almost replicate the same thing that happened with you. But I'm just guessing here. I'm assuming that's when you get to that highest level, you're not dealing with that issue.
You're not, and it's peer nominated at the end of the day. And then there's boards, on top of that they hyper select like who's going to be in charge because of the gravity of that scenario.
Yeah.
Because when you're leading, you're having to give up a component of what you used to do in your career because you have to take on this added responsibility.
Yeah.
And managing is just one component of leadership, right? Managing people's schedules and workloads and things of that nature. That's just one aspect of it. You also have the coaching, you have the mentorship, you have
decision making,
100%. So it's a much, much different environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
When you get there, but
It's hard though in the private sector because it's not built into that. For
it
most
it
companies,
is,
yeah.
and there's not courses, right? And I think it's really about teaching organizations. When you invest in your culture, when you invest in professional development, we do a lot. So my background, the community is tremendous. It's tremendous around professional development.
Mm-hmm.
You go find the best people in the industry and you go learn from them, right? So
Yep.
we're a military unit, but we might have a civilian pistol instructor
Yeah.
that is a 7-time world champion, right? That's all that person does all day long, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, is shoot pistols. We're gunslingers, yes, but we have more than just a pistol. So, but if we want to improve our pistol skills, we go and hire that person,
Yeah.
right? And so same with combatives, same with skydiving, same with all these multitude of skill sets. And we understand the value of professional development, but we're not driven by the bottom line. We're not worried about cash flow, and we're not worried about revenue generation. We have a very specific
It's a
thing.
lot of revenue.
To do. We're spending a lot of.
I was about to say spending
We're
revenue.
spending a
spending a
lot.
lot.
Very good at that.
We've talked about that in the past. Titanium ladders.
Yeah.
All the difference.
Yeah. Right. But companies have to worry about that. So everything they're doing, if you're doing it correctly, they're seeing dollar signs above it.
Yeah.
And how is that affecting their bottom line? And I think one of the responsibilities we have as consultants to industry and performance coaching and helping organizations raise the bar is getting them to buy into this concept of continuing education, professional development.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do it appropriately and you're willing to see past that initial sticker shock, then I think you'll end up reaping the rewards of which have you guys ever read Culture Code?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So I think we already talked about that, right? Is that Harvard did that great 10-year study where it was 700+% ROI.
Yeah.
Based on how much you invested in your culture, that professional development and leadership training is 100% part of that.
Yeah.
You just have to get past, but it's not something you can touch.
Yeah.
It's not something that you can see on a piece of paper or a quarterly statement or things of that nature when you're closing out the book. So you can't see that, but you have to believe and trust in that process and let that, what we call be aggressively patient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Be aggressive around the idea and the concept you're solving for, and then patiently wait to see the results. And culture is one of those components that requires aggressive patience.
We talk about that
Preaching to the choir. I mean, that's why what we do together fits so well because, we're really good strategists at the kind of macro level, and we're really good at figuring out a way to communicate culture really effectively and helping leaders do that. But our clients are kind of world renowned for the culture. And so we get a lot of inquiries coming in, and we go through a process trying to evaluate whether or not the organization just wants what we call words on the wall.
Sure.
Or they are actually dedicated to developing leaders. And if they don't have that, and we don't feel like it's not a good fit because we can't put words on the wall and change your culture, right? And so that's the hard part.
And that's not good for your brand either.
No, exactly.
Right? And so I do the
Because then they don't see
same
change.
type of interview. It's like an interview process, right? It's
Yep.
like, okay, I could take your money all day long.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm about, right? It's what I want about is that I'm going to have the satisfaction of knowing that I helped out your organization, and you're going to have the satisfaction knowing that you actually achieved something.
Yep.
And if you're not willing to buy into the concepts that I'm going to be presenting, then this is going to be a failed relationship.
And it's funny, you mentioned it earlier, kind of like why you do this. It's so similar to like why we do this. I mean, I could have gone and was going to go back and just have a normal corporate leadership job. But then we talked about like our purpose is really about helping individuals have meaningful lives through meaningful work, because there's so many people that don't have that. And so what you said is like, you can see the impact you can have in one organization is really wide, and you can go to multiple organizations and do that. And so that aligns right with what we believe and why we do what we do.
Using the information we learn from other organizations. Everyone thinks that everything they're doing is unique to them, but in reality, most of what they're doing is the exact or very similar to what most people are doing. And so that can be really positive, though, because you can say, oh, you think this is a fire that's very unique to you, but we've actually seen that across the board, and here's how you solve for it. And if people are willing to kind of look at things that way, of it's everyone has a similar fire at different situations, then that is really impactful. So that's, I think, what drives us as well, is being able to share the knowledge across different organizations.
You make a powerful point, and it's really what in the early days of when I leveled up my SEAL career, is one of the things that we did across the country was these key leader exchanges, right? And so you're sitting with like the greatest companies in the world, and you're sitting there with their executive leadership team, and we have our leadership team there, and you're round tabling, like, hey, what's your best practices, right? So, our elite special forces didn't create all of these concepts in a vacuum, right? It's, that's where the humility thing comes about. You don't have all the answers. Damn good at what they do, and I'm really grateful that we have a force out there that's willing to take on that responsibility. But it really is the exchange of the best ideas from the most brilliant minds, within the United States and around, because we have partner, countries that we go over there and we share with their special forces, and so it's this constant exchange of the best ideas and what they come across that really drives what you're talking about. It's vitally important, and that's why when you have a great consulting company that has a variety of different clients that execute very well, you're able to leverage that exact same concept and share those best practices.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a great feeling when it works.
It's
such 100%. A great feeling. A couple of things Nikki had written down that I want to make sure maybe we just hit real quick. We got to talk about the dogs, your canines in the unit. We're very curious how, because I think you had one in your unit. Talk to us about first of all, what are the canines doing in a SEAL team unit? And then what's the relationship like with the guys and the dog and the canine?
Yeah, so this disclaimer here is I was never a dog handler. Right. So that is an added profession, an added skill set.
Just like being a medic or an explosive 100%. Specialist.
100%. I was a medic, and I was also a master breacher, so explosive based. And being a dog handler is a full-time job. I mean, you training that dog all the time. You're working with the dog all the time. It's in very high stress situations, environments. I mean, you're jumping out of the plane with a dog,
strapped to you.
Yeah, you're
70-pound dog.
Fast roping down a rope out of a helicopter with a dog, and really our military working dogs are just exceptional animals. Yeah. I mean, just the best animals in the world.
Typically Belgian Malinois.
Yes. Yeah. Aggressive. And, they all have their own personalities too. And some of them get a little wild. Yeah. And you don't want to be around that for sure. But they're trained very well to know the team and not attack the team. Right?
How do you guys interact like the unit? Is everyone petting the dog and hanging out with the dog, or is it just he's a
No, weapon? You don't really do that. No, okay. you don't mess around with a dog without his handler there.
Yeah. But can you pet him?
You can. Okay. I mean, depending on the dog, right? we had our dog. His name was Diesel, and he used to chew on cinder blocks and work out with truck tires. Yeah. And
y'all just look at him like
Diesel, it was an incredible dog,
crazy ass dog,
and it would sit with us on the couch, after operations, stuff like that, and just be there.
Yeah.
And it's like the dog's right here, and I would, I never wanted to make sudden movements or
a little uncomfortable.
You're like, I don't necessarily want to make eye contact with the dog.
Yeah, I don't want to make eye contact. You don't want to make eye contact with the dog. Like if you're definitely not a handler, because those dogs they're legit.
Yeah.
Legit.
So we probably have a lot of new listeners that are probably wondering why in the hell did they just ask about the random dog? So Nikki and I had a Belgian Malinois, which Ed knew, Hutch. We lost him last year ago, last March to cancer. But that's why we're always so obsessed with the Malinois and the canines in that. So,
They're impressive.
Yeah.
Just impressive creatures.
yeah. He was definitely special. He would not. We called him Fat Boy. He probably wouldn't have done very well for the SEAL team. You met him. But
They could use him as like mental health helper,
right.
where if you're really having a stressful day out there, come home and he'll lay on you.
yeah, exactly.
But he wasn't chewing on cinder blocks.
How
It's
do
been
people
great.
find out about the foundation?
Yeah, so it's untoldjourneyfoundation.org.
Okay.
Yeah,
Let's go to the website.
Yeah, we're revamping the website right now and getting integrated with all the donation buttons and stuff like that. But yeah, it's going to be a great venture.
Yeah, awesome. Congrats on that.
We're excited.
Yeah,
for more.
I've been on the board of the C4 Foundation, which was Charles Keating IV for about 5 years now, and so they do this exact same thing on the West Coast.
Yeah.
So I have a great relationship with them. The founder, Charlie's dad, Charlie Keating, was a SEAL who was killed in 2016, and a Navy Cross recipient, which is our second highest award. And so they do all these retreats for the community out on the West Coast, and it's time for the East Coast to have a version of it.
Yeah, that'd be cool. So you can go to the website and you can. Is there a newsletter sign up or something like that?
We're getting ready to relaunch the new website.
Right. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Good. So stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, it's gonna be coming real soon.
All right.
Great.
Real soon.
What else is coming up? Anything else? Just lots of work.
Just lots of work. Yeah, just as clients and helping drive organizations and leaders, right? So I think that probably the last component of it, the whole leadership thing, culture, all that stuff, like what can really translate is as you look back and you start to dissect like how the mastermind around why SEAL training is the way it is and develops your physical, component is also the mental aspect. And so, there's what I teach a lot now, and it's stuff I bring into presentations even more and more, is just around that, how critically important it is around like your neuro-linguistic programming. And so it's, when you talk about your subconscious mind, which is one of the first, things that forms, it's going between 40, 70,000 thoughts in any given day, right? And the interesting part about it is, for the average person, is that of those, say, 60,000 thoughts, 90% of them are repetitive in nature. So, and then about 80% of those are negative. It's quite crazy to think about that the average person, probably why they're, would be considered average, is that they're processing 40,000 thoughts a day subconsciously that are negative in nature.
Yeah.
It's really hard to be successful.
Yeah. If that's what you're thinking
if your subconscious computer is majority is negative thinking.
Yep. Yep.
Right. And so one of the aspects of like what, ultimately what, like SEAL training is talking about, and it builds you back up, is to build this confidence in you that you can do more than what you think is capable. You just have to be put in environments and have the willingness to participate to achieve that that thing that you did not think was possible. And so when you do that, that's what drives your, your self-image. And then that's when you can make logical, sensical choices and from your conscious mind, which are 600 thoughts a day, 1,000 thoughts a day, something like that, to reinforce those goals around your self-image. But I think it really starts with, you have to, if you're having those, like, why am I not achieving something? Why am I not successful in life? It is, that concept around hey, you are the product of the 5 people you hang around.
Yeah.
And so if the people you're hanging around are negative in nature, or, all they do is talk about, gossip and other people instead of talking about ideas and goals and where you want to go in life and, implanting those seeds of success, then that is the biggest self-limiter governor you can have in your life, right? And so it's about retraining yourself and making sure that you're very cautious of who you're around and what you're consuming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you rebranded really hard work into willingness to participate. I'm going to start saying that. That's what we talk about. Like, that's the missing part of it too, is like, it's just hard work. And a lot of people they want the easy button.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome.
Yeah, this has been great. We really
Thanks. I'm
appreciate
glad
it.
we waited until we could do this in person.